In the town of Brookridge, there was a boy who spent most of his life being invisible. His name was Damon Reed. He wasn't loud. He wasn't athletic. He wasn't anyone you would notice, unless you were trying really hard. But one rainy afternoon in the spring of 2023, Damon decided he didn't want to be invisible anymore. That was the day he did something so shocking, so horrifying, that the entire town would be forced to remember him forever. And it all started because of one girl. One girl who laughed at him. Damon Reed had always lived in the background. At Brookridge High, he was the kid eating lunch alone. The kid no one picked for projects. The kid teachers forgot about halfway through attendance. At home, it wasn't much better. His mother worked double shifts. His sister barely looked up from her phone. Damon moved through his days like a ghost, unseen, unheard, unwanted. Meanwhile, there was Emily Carter. Emily was everything Damon wasn't. She was bold, funny, beautiful. She ruled the school's social media scene, TikToks, Instagram selfies, Snapchat streaks that stretched into the thousands. Boys practically fought each other just for a chance to talk to her. Damon could only watch from a distance, scrolling through her perfect photos, imagining conversations that would never happen, building up a lifetime of silent frustration. It was a Thursday in late March when everything changed. A sudden storm rolled over Brookridge, drenching the streets just as school let out. Damon stood under the covered walkway, watching as students hurried to their cars or huddled under umbrellas. And then he saw her, Emily, struggling with a broken umbrella, laughing as the rain soaked her hair. Before he could think, Damon stepped forward. "Hey, you want to share?" he asked, holding out his hoodie awkwardly. Emily blinked, surprised. Then she smiled. "Sure, Damon. Thanks." For a few precious minutes, they walked side by side, tucked together under his soaked hoodie, talking about nothing at all. Damon's heart raced. Maybe, just maybe, she was different. As they approached the edge of town, Damon suggested a shortcut. Through an abandoned housing development, a row of half-built houses left empty when the company funding them had gone bankrupt. "It'll save us a few minutes," he said, trying to sound casual. Emily hesitated, then shrugged. "Sure, why not?" Inside the skeleton frames of those empty houses, the world felt smaller, quieter, isolated. They stepped into the largest house, just wooden beams and concrete floors, to get out of the rain. Emily tossed her wet backpack onto a pile of wood scraps and laughed. "You're crazy, Damon," she said, brushing rain from her hair. "But thanks for the save." She smiled at him, the kind of smile that usually ended up on Instagram, the kind that wasn't meant for him. And something inside Damon broke. "Why are you nice to them?" he said suddenly. "All those other guys, they treat you like garbage." Emily's smile faded. She laughed, but it was the wrong kind of laugh. The kind you give someone when you're uncomfortable. "Relax, Damon," she said. "You're sweet, but you're, not really my type." Damon's fists clenched. "Not your type?" "Come on," she said, laughing again. "You're harmless. You couldn't hurt a fly." And that was the last thing she ever said. In one staggering moment of rage and heartbreak, Damon grabbed a broken plank from the ground and swung. When it was over, Damon stood trembling in the hollow silence of the half-built house. Emily lay motionless in a puddle of rainwater, her blood spreading into the cracks of the concrete. Damon stared down at her, breathing heavily. "I did it," he whispered. "I finally did something no one will forget." He dropped the plank and stumbled home through the rain, feeling a strange kind of triumph. At dinner, soaked and muddy, he sat across from his mother and sister. His mom didn't even look up from her laptop. His sister scrolled through her phone, barely glancing at him. "I killed Emily today," Damon said calmly. They laughed. "Gross, Damon," his sister said, making a face. "You're so weird." "Cut it out," his mom muttered, tapping at her keyboard. "We don't joke about stuff like that." "I'm not joking," Damon said. "She's in the new houses, in the rain." But nobody listened. Nobody ever listened. The next morning, when Damon didn't show up for school and rumors started flying, a search party was organized. It didn't take long. The construction site was still flooded from the storm. Mud everywhere. And there, inside the largest unfinished house, they found him, Damon Reed, hanging from the rafters. Beside him, they found Emily's body. The police called it a tragic murder-suicide, but almost no one in town believed Damon had done it. That boy, Damon, he couldn't hurt anyone, they said. He was too quiet, too harmless. Even in death, Damon Reed remained invisible. Damon spent his whole life trying to be seen, trying to matter. In the end, he succeeded, but not in the way he had dreamed. Brookridge would always remember what happened in the rain that day. They would remember Emily Carter, the girl everyone adored, and maybe, just maybe, on certain rainy nights, when the streets are empty, someone passing by those abandoned houses might still hear it. A soft voice in the wind, whispering, "You should have listened." I still remember that day like it was yesterday, even though 10 years have passed. It was supposed to be a happy occasion, my twin daughter's birthday. Their first one since the divorce was finalized. Getting away from Derek hadn't been easy. For 7 years, I endured his controlling behavior, the way his temper would flare without warning. At first, it was just shouting, then pushing, and eventually, well, I became an expert at covering bruises with makeup and explaining away injuries as my own clumsiness. Heather was the one who saved us. She noticed things others didn't. How I flinched when someone raised their voice. How I always checked my phone with that look of dread. How I'd stopped wearing short sleeves regardless of the weather. One afternoon, while the girls were napping, she confronted me with such gentle determination that my carefully constructed walls crumbled. "You don't have to live like this," she whispered, holding my trembling hands. "Neither do your daughters." That simple statement broke something inside me. The thought of my girls growing up thinking this was normal, that this was what love looked like, it was unbearable. Heather didn't just offer emotional support. She helped me document the abuse, connected me with a lawyer who specialized in domestic violence cases, and even let us stay with her during those first terrifying weeks after I filed for the restraining order. When Derek violated it twice, she testified on my behalf. Her unwavering presence during the divorce proceedings gave me strength I didn't know I possessed. The day before the twins' birthday party, Heather called to ask what the girls would like as gifts. "They've been obsessed with those plush unicorns lately," I told her, "the ones that light up." "Consider it done," she laughed. "I'll see you tomorrow around 4, okay? Need me to bring anything else?" "Just yourself," I said. "The girls can't wait to see their godmother." The next day was perfect. Balloons decorated the living room. A homemade cake cooled on the counter. The excited squeals of 5-year-olds echoed through the house as they helped me arrange party favors. A few of their friends from kindergarten would be arriving soon with their parents. A black SUV pulled into the driveway, and my friends, Laura and Allison, climbed out, laughing and juggling grocery bags and presents. They'd come to help out. We exchanged pleasantries, and I returned to the kitchen as they put finishing touches on the party setup. While checking the roast in the oven, I glanced out the window and felt my heart warm at the sight of Heather walking up the sidewalk. She was carrying an enormous gift bag, decorated with unicorn patterns, visible even from a distance. Then something strange happened. She suddenly turned, as if someone had called her name. That's when I noticed the Summit Express delivery van parked across the street. My blood ran cold. Derek had been working for Summit Express since before we met. Heather never made it inside. By the time I realized she hadn't come through the door, I figured maybe she was grabbing something from her car. Maybe she'd gotten a call. Maybe anything but what it really was. The party started and time flew. Dinner was eaten, the cake cut, and still no Heather. I tried her number. It rang until it went to voicemail. Laura kept checking her phone, frowning. "Heather, where are you?" Panic prickled my skin. We kept texting and calling, still getting the same result. It rang until it went to voicemail. Finally, I called the police. They came, but said they couldn't really do anything. We hadn't seen her being abducted or harassed. They said maybe she changed her mind and went to another party. But that couldn't be true. I had seen her coming with the unicorn gifts. We looked in the yard, the street. Nothing. No Heather. Just the night swallowing everything whole. The police questioned Derek, of course. He had motive. Heather had been instrumental in helping me escape him, had testified against him in court. But he had an alibi for most of that day. Said he'd been making deliveries across town, and his tracker confirmed it. The only unaccounted for time was a 40-minute lunch break. Not enough time to abduct someone, dispose of evidence, and return to work without raising suspicion, the detectives said. And that was earlier in the day. Heather wasn't missing then. Besides, there was no body, no crime scene, no witnesses. Just a woman who had seemingly vanished into thin air. Life moved on in that strange way it does after tragedy. The twins grew older. I moved us to a different city. Derek eventually stopped trying to get visitation rights after missing too many court-mandated appearances. Then, 10 years later, I got the call. Deep in the woods, past Lone Pine, where the trees grow so thick they choke out the sun. Some Boy Scouts on a hiking expedition stumbled over a patch of disturbed earth. Probably animals, they thought. It was about 30 miles from our old house. They discovered a piece of bone and called the authorities. Police uncovered what was left, a human skeleton. Dental records confirmed it was Heather Crane. Still wearing that brown coat and red scarf, forensic evidence pointed to Derek. His DNA under her fingernails. Fibers from his Summit Express uniform. They called me in after they arrested Derek. Chief Holloway sat across from me in a windowless conference room, flipping through a folder thick with photographs and reports. "We believe Derek was stalking you," he said. "That night, he'd planned to break into your home." I shivered. When they brought him in for questioning, he finally confessed. He had been planning to come to the house, not to celebrate the twins' birthday, but to kill us all. He'd been watching the house for weeks, knew our routines. What he hadn't counted on was an elaborate birthday party. Too many witnesses. Then he saw Heather approaching with her gift, alone. The detective told me Derek described it as an opportunity too perfect to pass up. He'd called her name from his van, and she'd recognized him, hesitated. He told her he had a surprise gift for the twins in the back of his van, asked for her help. And that was when I saw her look over her shoulder. That single moment of hesitation cost Heather her life. Derek had overpowered her quickly, driven her to a predetermined location where he had already dug a grave days earlier, believing it would be for his ex-wife and daughters. Looking back, I realized I had noticed Summit Express delivery vans parked near the house a few times in the days leading up to the party. I'd even commented to the girls once that someone must have been lost. But I never added it up. I never thought it could be Derek, watching us, planning. As the detective described what happened next, I felt sick. The man I once loved, the father of my children, had stolen the life of the woman who saved us. And if things had gone according to his plan, we would have been buried in that same grave. I closed my eyes. Heather's laugh, her bright eyes, her easy smile, all snuffed out because of me. You weren't responsible, Holloway said gently. But the words slid off me like rain. I could still see Derek, standing across the street in the fog, waiting, watching, choosing. Sometimes I stand at my kitchen window, watching my teenage daughters in the backyard, their laughter brightening even the darkest days. If you're ever passing through Brooks Township in New Jersey, you might drive right by a battered old house on Lakeview Road without a second glance. To me, it was just the creaking, drafty place where I watched my mother's desperation slowly consume her. It's boarded up now, graffiti splashed across the cracked windows. The mailbox still says, Gilded Inn, even though nobody's checked it in years. That house was once my home. When I was 16, my mom, Mara, was trying to keep the Gilded Inn running after she inherited it from my grandparents. It was this creaky, half-falling apart Victorian nightmare with too many rooms and way too many memories. She turned it into a bed and breakfast because, honestly, what else do you do with a haunted-looking house and no savings? And if I'm being brutally honest, my mom was lonely, like scary lonely. After Dad ran off with Stacy, the 20-something barista from Java Jolt, when I was 12, seriously, he left a note and everything. Mom lost it. Mom changed. What started as occasional dating app scrolling morphed into something more desperate by the time I turned 16, clinging to this idea that she was still desirable, that she could find someone better. For the next few years, she'd flutter around male guests, laughing too loudly at their jokes, finding excuses to enter their rooms. It was embarrassing, but I kept quiet. We needed the money, and the inn was all we had. The Gilded Inn became her stage. Every male guest under 45 became a potential new start. It was gross. Julian moved in about 8 months ago. He was good-looking in that intellectual way, with wire-rimmed glasses and a perpetual 5 o'clock shadow. He claimed to be writing a novel and needed atmospheric inspiration. Mom practically tripped over herself trying to provide that atmosphere, bringing him tea he never asked for, suggesting local haunts he might find stimulating. She even laughed like she was auditioning for a bad sitcom every time he said literally anything. It was pathetic, sad, and a little creepy. Julian, though, he acted like he didn't even notice. Maybe because Mom was pushing 45 and he was, 28? Or perhaps because he had other things on his mind, women closer to his age. He's just shy, she'd tell me in the kitchen, rearranging her blouse to show more cleavage before delivering his fresh towels. Creative types need time to warm up. Or maybe because he had other things on his mind. I rolled my eyes so much that year, I'm surprised they didn't get stuck that way. That same week, Richard Blackwood showed up. He was this hulking guy who said he worked nights at SwiftX Logistics, the giant Amazon-type warehouse just outside town. Seasonal gig. Paid crap, long hours. He looked rough, like a guy who'd seen too many bar fights and maybe started half of them. It was raining the night he arrived, water dripping from his leather jacket onto our welcome mat. Something about him made my skin crawl instantly. Maybe the way his eyes never quite focused on anything, or how his smile seemed to stop at his lips without reaching the rest of his face. "No rooms available," Mom said apologetically, though I could tell she was relieved. Something about him unsettled her too. That's when Julian appeared at the top of the stairs, complaining about his rent. He'd been late twice already, claiming his publisher was withholding an advance, and he might have to move. Mom's glance shifted to Julian, and then back to the newcomer. I watched something calculate behind Mom's eyes before she said, "Actually, we might have an arrangement that could work for everyone." She offered Richard half of Julian's room at a reduced rate. Julian looked furious but couldn't argue, not when it meant keeping his precious writing space. Richard just nodded silently, those empty eyes revealing nothing. Life at the Gilded Inn settled into this uneasy rhythm. Julian was everyone's golden boy. Richard barely said 2 words to anyone. Meanwhile, our quiet town in New Jersey was buzzing with fear because women were being murdered, strangled, dumped in alleys and by the beach. The papers called the killer the Iron Vice. 3 days later, I found Mom clipping newspaper articles about missing women in neighboring counties. She jumped when I entered the kitchen, quickly folding the paper. "Just keeping informed," she said, but I saw the way she glanced toward the ceiling, toward Julian and Richard's room. Over the next 2 weeks, Mom's behavior grew increasingly erratic. She'd press her ear to their door when cleaning the hallway. She started logging Richard's comings and goings in a small notebook she thought I didn't know about. At dinner, she'd casually mention the disappearances, watching Richard's reaction. "They found another one yesterday," she'd say, passing the salt. "In the river this time. 3rd woman this month." Richard would grunt and continue eating. Julian, though, would ask questions, detailed ones about the victims, about police theories. Mom interpreted this as concern. I wasn't so sure. Weeks passed, and then Mom found a $20 bill with a weird dark stain on it when she was counting the rent money. She freaked out, locked herself in her office. She called the cops that night, whispering through the receiver like she was already dead. "Yes, I'd like to report the tip about the missing women. Yes, I can hold." They arrested Richard right there, dragged him out in handcuffs. He didn't protest. I should have felt relieved. But something didn't sit right with me. 4 nights later, it happened. I woke up around 2 a.m. to this weird thudding noise. I thought it was a raccoon on the porch. I crept out of bed and down the hallway. The house was too quiet. the kind of quiet that felt wrong. Mom's bedroom door was open. I peeked inside, and I swear to God, my stomach dropped straight to my feet. The window was open, curtains flapping, and Mom was lying on the floor. Still. Her neck bent at this awful angle, like a doll someone got tired of playing with. There were no signs of a break-in, no signs of a struggle, just her, dead. I called 911. The police said it must have been Richard. They'd released him 3 days earlier. He had a strong alibi for the victim. The DNA on the money belonged to. He was at work. That was confirmed by his supervisor at the warehouse where he worked with video evidence. They'd released him, but he never came back to the house until tonight, they thought. Julian was missing too. Maybe Richard got to Julian, the police speculated. Both men were never found. But the killings stopped in our area, only to begin again 2 states over. One or both could be the killer. I moved away after that. Foster care, therapy, new town, new life. I didn't step foot back in Brooks Township for 10 years. Last summer, I came back. The Gilded Inn had been mine since I turned 26. And honestly, I wanted to sell it. Get it out of my life for good. One afternoon, I was up in the attic, clearing out old junk, when I noticed something weird about the wall behind Julian's old closet. The boards were newer, a different color. I pried them loose. Behind the wall was a hidden room, no bigger than a walk-in closet. And inside, carefully stacked in cardboard boxes, were dozens of trophies, necklaces, ID cards, tattered purses, yellowed newspaper clippings about the murders, and in the corner, a stained mattress. I found a journal tucked under it, Julian's handwriting. Neat, clinical. It was Julian's novel. He wrote in long form, hundreds of pages detailing each murder, each woman, each moment. Things only the killer could know. Richard Blackwood made the perfect shadow, one line said. The town needed a monster. I gave them one. It was Julian. It had always been Julian. He killed those women. He killed my mom. He used Richard, a sad, broken man, as the perfect scapegoat, slipping the stained money into his wallet. Julian had slipped away after Mom's death, moving to some new town, some new name, some new set of victims, I guess. Nobody ever looked for him. Nobody ever knew. The police eventually found Richard Blackwood alive and working at another warehouse in Florida. But Julian was never found. They say the Gilded Inn is haunted now. Late at night, you can hear a woman weeping and see a man standing by the attic window, staring down at the street. I don't know if ghosts are real, but monsters are. And sometimes, they wear the sweetest smiles.
She called 911, but no one came. A rookie cop found her body in a motel. No witnesses, no backup, just blood and a phone still recording. The voice on that phone, it said, "Don't let him take me." I was supposed to protect her, but someone higher up wanted her gone. They shut me down. My partner got shot, and the guy calling the shots, he wore a badge too. That's when I learned justice doesn't wait for permission. Some cases stay with you. This one never left. Don't let him take me.